Last night I watched Oppenheimer in IMAX, 70 millimeter. Just sharing my thoughts. First of all, IMAX visuals are not as good as people hyped it up to be. And dude, the sound mixing was awful. Like the voices were literally clipping like mid vowel. Like somebody would be saying a word in the middle of the vowel, it would like clip and then it would go back down. And then it would clip and then it would go back. Like it was terrible, terrible sound mixing. Even worse than my sound mixing right now, which I'm about to just fix because I just saw it clipping. Ironic. Also, the soundtrack at some points was just like really overbearing with their melodies. There was no like particularly memorable soundtrack like how there is with like Interstellar and things like that, right? Where it's like super memorable even after you hear it once. But it was like there was moments of arpeggio or arpeggiator or whatever that would just play like really really loud with like a really defined, not so great, just a melody that's there at like random points that doesn't even need to have any sound at all. Also, why? I thought the whole movie was shot on 70 millimeter. Why does the aspect ratio change in the movie? Why does that happen? I get for like The Dark Knight because he was shooting on a bunch of different cameras, but it's like, bro, in the scene with like Robert Downey Jr. talking and like it's having those like flashbacks. It was near the end. It's like back and forth, huge aspect ratio changes, dude. So much of the movie is unmemorable, like a huge percentage of it, because Nolan is not trying to, like, Nolan is really really good at fiction. He's trying to make a film about someone's life, a real person's life. And in order to go, like, I assume his goal was to, like, first and foremost capture the essence of Oppenheimer as a character, as a person, and the complexity of him. And I wouldn't say it's Chekhov's gun because it's not like there's not like plot points or anything related to it. But it's like in real life, if you're just stylizing someone's life and you're just showing it, so many of these things will play into their character, but their character will not play into the story in any way. So much of who we are as people does not impact the world around us or our lives or anything like that. That's why there's that quote, film is just life with all the dull bits cut out. But you have to include those dull bits if you want to capture the complete essence of his character. So it's like he threw in so many things that helped you to greater understand Oppenheimer, but Oppenheimer, it didn't even have any impact on his life. It didn't even have any impact on like the people around him or anything like that. It was like pointless for him to even have that kind of character. That's why he's great at telling fiction. Has such a strong understanding of what makes compelling characters. But it's like, you don't get the option to do that with nonfiction. You can stylize someone's already existing life. It's not gonna be as interesting. And I don't know why, I don't know who convinced him that like, oh, you should go with the realistic approach. Realistic dialogue, realistic audio mixing that sounds like real voices, even though my dad said it sounded really unrealistic. So it's in the eye of the beholder. But I don't know who convinced him that like, it's such a childish thing. Realism is better. It's such a, oh, Call of Duty's better than Halo because it's more realistic. There are like grand, giant stories that you can tell. And it's only artists like Chris Nolan that could tell them to their fullest potential. In The Dark Knight, every single word spoken by anyone felt earth-shattering. It felt important and felt impactful. 80% of the words in this movie just felt like words. Couldn't even hear any of it. And in the end, Oppenheimer was still confusing. And it was not even like I get that it's meant to be, I believe that it's meant to be left ambiguous, right? On the morality of a guy like that and all that. But it feels empty. It feels less like it's ambiguous to the depth of Oppenheimer's character on how great he is or how terrible he is. And more like Oppenheimer doesn't even have that character to begin with. It just feels empty. It feels like he doesn't have much of a character. Literally, Joy from Blade Runner 2049 has felt like she had more of a character, and she was a fucking robot. Like, she was intentionally made out to be a characterless, lifeless, soulless AI, but just having hints of appearing like she has a soul. And she feels like she has more character deep down than, but maybe that's just me. Maybe that's because I'm a 23-year-old, straight dude. Maybe that's why I feel that way. Who knows? And speaking of that, I know going into artists' movies, like these kinds of Blade Runner and those kinds of movies, right? I know going into it, I have to check beforehand what the rating is going to be. Is it going to be rated R, rated PG-13, whatever? I have to check the parents' guide. I have to check why it's rated R. And these kinds of movies I'm probably gonna watch alone. But a Chris Nolan movie, dude, like my family's been watching. We watched hella Chris Nolan movies growing up. He never had nudity in his movies once, and that ruins movies, dude. That literally ruins movies. Your movie, I swear to God, dude, I swear to God, if it has nudity, it will never. I don't know if I gave Blade Runner a perfect score. I might have. And if I have, I retroactively go in and give it a 9. Because if it has nudity, it can never be perfect. You can, there's, oh, man, but Blade Runner, it was done so tastefully, so tastefully. But it's like, there is a downside to like, I can't watch these movies with my parents. I know a lot of people are not going to understand that. 23 years old, yeah, it's a different culture. It's a different culture that does not, that isn't so open about sex and that kind of thing. That views sex as like a deeply personal thing that other people should not have an intimate look on, you know? It's like an anti-cuck culture. Like, if you really think about it, movies are just you being cucks of someone else's adventure rather than you going on your own adventure. I'm going to spend 3 hours of my life sitting in theater watching somebody else go on their adventure. You're being a cuck to someone else's life. It's probably even worse than watching porn, honestly. Like, nobody goes on adventures anymore, and people try to find the root cause of that. Oh, lack of this chemical, lack of that chemical. Anybody ever considered the fact that movies are mainstream now? It's like, I love watching movies with my parents, especially my mom. Movies and TV shows and things like that. Like, it was amazing introducing Avatar: Last Airbender to my mom and my dad. We all watched it together, watched the whole thing, they loved it. And just growing up, watching all this stuff. Whenever there would be nudity, it would always be really weird. And like, even though we've moved past all that, and I'm an adult now, and like, we're well past any conversation I know about sex and all this stuff, right? And also my mom got married when she was like 20 or 21 or something like that. So my parents are like totally aware of all this stuff. But that doesn't mean you should put it in movies. That doesn't mean we want to watch it in movies. And it's like, dude, I've only ever seen like 3 instances in my life where nudity in movies has actually made it better. One of them being Blade Runner 2049. Other than that, and like maybe a couple others, which I can't think of off the top of my head, but I can't rule out that there's others. Every single time there's ever been nudity on the screen, it's made it worse. People talk about fan service in anime. Why don't they talk about that in movies? Why has nobody made this discussion? It's worse. It's literally worse. It's so prevalent that nobody even bothers to say anything about it. At least in anime, it's still just like fucking drawings, right? You're still like, a lot of these shows just suck regardless of whether or not they have fan service. But in these movies, it literally ruins the possibility of people who are younger from watching it. It ruins it. And like, why? Why would you not give, younger people the benefit of the doubt that they can understand these kinds of things? A lot of them can. And when you give kids the opportunity to use their brain, watch how they rise up to the occasion. Why would you restrict them from that? And people are like, oh, the whole world is like, America, stop being so, puritanical or whatever. I don't know what the hell word people would use for it. Prude, no, not prude. Crude, no, not crude. Prude is the word. It'd be like, stop doing all that. Dude, it's a different culture. If you take just the 2 continents, Asia and Africa, right? That's 80% of the world. That's 80% of the entire population of the whole world. Just Asia and Africa. People tell me, oh, the whole world's moving in this direction. Motherfucker, you don't even know what the world is. You haven't even seen a glimpse of the tip of the iceberg from a lens 7 degrees separated of what the world could possibly be, maybe in your feeble little mind. You don't even understand it. And people just going on this like branch super far away from that which is overwhelmingly human, which is to view sex as something that has a bit of tabooness to it. And just to go in this direction and go like, oh, everyone is okay with this. It's like, no, you don't fucking understand. No, everyone's not okay with this. Stick to what works and what's real, And that's also part of why I think Chris Nolan's so great, because he takes risks, And I like people that take risks. But this one just didn't feel that risky. This one felt like he included so many unnecessary scenes, like just to please everyone. Oh, there's a scene in here that'll please everyone. There's a scene in here that everyone can look back on and go like, okay, this covers this plot hole. This covers this. This covers this. Especially like This is why I weirded out by the whole idea that it's supposed to be ambiguous. His character at the end, Oppenheimer's character, because it's like he left nothing else in the movie ambiguous. Everything else was spelled out for you. Oh, Robert Downey Jr. was the good guy. Psyche was actually the bad guy. Oh, this guy was the good guy. Psyche was actually the bad guy. This person killed themselves. Oh yeah, did they actually kill themselves? Did they get killed? Oh yeah, no, they killed themselves. Like everything is so spelled out. Like you could. There's no reason to show what Oppenheimer and Einstein talked about. That could have been part of the discussion people had online of this kind of thing. You know, I think it was stupid to even show Einstein's face. I thought in the beginning I was actually getting ready to literally praise this movie because it was showing Einstein from a distance in like a blur, right? Or like with the lens blur, depth of field, they were out of focus. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. It's like because Einstein at this point is more of a mythical figure than he is a historic figure. It makes more sense to not show his face than to show his face. But they not only showed his face excessively, they also gave him a bad actor. And history is always very ambiguous. Like you talk to people who don't have access to the internet, they just make up shit. They just make up stories. That's a part of life. Part of life is romanticizing everything. Talking about how like, dude, last time I went to India, they talked about like, oh, this guy's 120 years old, this guy's 145 years old. Like they're just making shit up on the spot. And it creates for like all these great stories. And it's really, honestly, I'd say great for your mental health to be in that kind of environment where things are left up to the imagination and you're constantly on this journey trying to sift through what's real and fake rather than, forcing the world to give you a guaranteed path to what's real, you know? It's so destination focused and not journey focused when really the meaning in life comes from the journey. And when people are always on thin ice all the time because they have to make sure that everything they say is perfectly accurate because people could just fact check it on the internet, and even the internet's not perfectly accurate, but even still, it ruins the ambiguity of life. And I think people in America and in the West in general just get so fucking caught up with this shit. It's like I can't help but think that Chris Nolan also got caught up with this attitude, and he was so averse to leaving anything ambiguous in the movie. Why the hell would I think he would do the same? Wouldn't do the same with Oppenheimer's character? Because literally, it left a void. It felt like he didn't have much of a character. Dude, watching the movie, I was thinking more that he's Tommy Shelby than Oppenheimer. This is Tommy Shelby, but he's like the pussy version of Tommy Shelby who wouldn't take matters into his own hands. That's all I was thinking. Literally, TikToks from Peaky Blinders will give more characterization to Cillian Murphy's character than the entirety of Oppenheimer. And you really could have left a lot of things ambiguous. You could have, because history is a lot more ambiguous than people would like to admit. But I'm not gonna. There are some things that I actually liked about the movie. Obviously, right? It bothers me because it's like walking out of the theater, you can hear people's conversations, right? And everyone is such a Chris Nolan dick rider now that it's like, listen, just because someone is a great artist doesn't mean everything they make will be great art. But I did like the Prometheus quote in the beginning of the movie because I just played Portal 2 and Prometheus' story was referenced in there too. I still never, looked into the story, but I vaguely remember hearing about it way back in the day, and I completely forgot. I'm such a fucking idiot. It wasn't knowledge. That's Ty Lopez's story. It was Prometheus was punished by the gods for giving the gift of fire to man, and he was tortured for eternity. That's an even better parallel to compare Prometheus to Oppenheimer than it is to GLaDOS or Aperture Science or Cave Johnson. Also, I really liked at the end how that last thing that was said, what was said to Einstein, that, oh, if we start a chain reaction, then it'll destroy the whole world. And he's like, I think we did. And that was really cool because, oh man, on a really deep level, it is still quantum mechanics, it is still chemistry, it is still destroying the atmosphere, destroying the environment. Because we are chemical processes. We're just too complex to consider ourselves chemical processes, but at the end of the day, we are still just as just as much of a flame pushing itself towards ground state or the lowest energy state possible, just as a uranium-235 chain reaction. This is also, I think of these kinds of things. In the movie, I was thinking of all these quotes, like when he got so deeply invested in making the bomb or whatever. I'm like, it takes a brilliant man to know how to accomplish a great feat, right? It takes a genius to know what to accomplish, whether or not that's even worth accomplishing, right? To have the right kinds of goals. That's part of how you separate Einstein and Oppenheimer. That's part of how you show the differences in level here. Oppenheimer may be a brilliant man, but he's no genius the way Einstein was. And actually, on an even deeper level than that, you kind of have to dismiss free will a little bit, which is chemical reactions. It takes a brilliant man to pursue something great. It takes a genius to know why they're pursuing it. And so many of these, Chris Nolan just does. He just throws fucking quotes in the movie at like random points, which is a cool thing, but it's also a downside for me personally because I have so many quotes in my head that like after the movie, I love talking about it with people. I love having a 6-hour long discussion about the movie, about a 3-hour long movie just after it happened when it's fresh on my mind with other people that watched it with me, you know? It's such a shame that nobody else cares about having these kinds of conversations. They just like, oh, what did you think? And then if I say something that makes a bad artist look good, I go, oh, this bad artist made a good movie, then people just ignore it, they go on their phone. Or if I say something, it was alright, I didn't really like it, to someone like Chris Nolan, they just go on their phone and they just stop talking. It's such a shame that that's usually what happens when I watch movies with other people. When I do this with people and they're listening, right? I love to fucking show off and inflate my ego and introduce all these cool quotes. Like I thought for sure they were gonna say in the movie, if World War III is fought with atomic bombs, World War IV will be fought with stones and sticks or something like that. I forgot. I think that's generally how the quote goes. It might be like rocks and something like that. But like it didn't show it. I thought like, you know, when Oppenheimer was in like that hearing, right? The fake, like not court hearing, but like, you know, the hearing to show like whether he should be removed of his security clearance. He was like, he would have been like, said some really cool, you know, Aaron Sorkin level dialogue, like speech showing his brilliance. He's like, yeah, I did this and I did this, but motherfucker, I saved the fucking world. That's what I did. You can pay me my dues for that. I would have expected something badass, but it's like, that never happened. And I don't think the movie was that great. Honestly, I really don't. I think it was just okay. And I would not watch it again. And I think that actually, the simple fact that I'd say that makes it even more great because there's one more thing they've taken into account with Chris Nolan, and he does this a lot, where the subject matter of the movie will often be compared to film. Like his love for film, he expresses that to the world by comparing it to other things, right? Other things that people can understand in a way like better than they can understand film, because nobody understands film the way the top level guys do. Like in The Prestige, which is probably my favorite Chris Nolan movie ever, he compares films to a magic trick. In a good magic trick, you're given all the information to figure out how it's done, to figure out all the little secrets, all the little nuances, and to spoil the magic for yourself. But if you truly enjoy it, you'll close your eyes when the person is covering the top over the box, putting the cloth over the bird cage, so that way you don't spoil the magic for yourself if you truly enjoy it, right? Even though you're given all the information to figure out how it's working, to break down how the magic trick works, you still believe it's magic. You still have that suspension of disbelief. And in the same way, he made a movie with that plot twist. Greatest plot twist I've ever seen in anything ever. All the pieces were spelled out to the point where at the end I was like, I'm so fucking stupid. How did I not see this? He literally spelled it out as if it wasn't a plot twist, as if he was just telling me this is what will happen, and then he made that happen. And I couldn't see it coming. And then he's like, you can figure out the secrets behind magic tricks, but you don't want to. Audience chooses to turn a blind eye because they enjoy thinking it's magic. And I'm like, fuck, dude. I wanted the movie to be magic. So I myself suppressed the idea that maybe this could lead to this. Genius. And that was The Prestige, and I don't want to go into other examples, but it's like, you know, Inception was like comparing movies to a dream. Like in the same way a movie can cut to a new scene and skip hella time and it's not weird. You know, if you were to do that in real life, it would be really weird. You just like skip a bunch of time and you'd be like, where the fuck did that time go? Did I just black out? But in a dream, you just end up there. There's no start to a dream. You just end up, you know? In the same way, they just ended up where they were, and because it was a movie, we didn't question it. He's comparing movies to dreams, and he does this a lot. He compares himself to the main core idea or the theme or the main character of a movie. And the fact that this movie wasn't that great might have also been a little intentional. He might have thrown in a lot of the stuff as flaws, like with audio mixing and things like that, but also story and things like that, because he's kind of giving a little hidden message. When you walk out of a Chris Nolan movie theater, everyone always has nice things to say about the movie. Nobody ever has anything bad to say about it. They treat this guy like a prophet. And in the movie, one of the most memorable lines was that, like, when you're testifying against Strauss or whatever, the people who are sitting up there will see themselves in Strauss, right? They'll listen to themselves, but in you, they see a prophet. And they'll listen to a prophet more than they'll listen to their own minds. And I'm like, oh shit. That's what separates the brilliant minds from the normies, from the people that don't think. People that listen to their own minds rather than listening to others. I always have conversations with people. I introduce them some idea and they're like, oh, where did you get this from? Where'd you get this from? They can't fathom the idea that I thought of it myself originally. They can't even think about that because they've never thought of their own original idea. So it's like they can't even imagine that another human being would be able to, which is why they imagine these other people as like larger than life figures and not as humans, which is why they fucking worship celebrities as if they're not human. It's like all these people, like they're like, oh, they made this. They need to fix coronavirus. I'm like, why don't you go fix it? Like, you're a human too, just like them. If they're capable of doing it, so are you. Go fix it if you care so much about it. That kind of shit. It's like people separate themselves from other people. They think to themselves like, oh, these are the prophets. These are the people to listen to. Whatever the word might be, experts, whatever the word might be colloquially at any given moment. And then there are people that listen to their own minds. They go like, I don't give a fuck what the prophet says. My own mind tells me this. My own mind tells me this movie's not so great. But in the same way that people would listen to Oppenheimer over their own intuition, people just see Chris Nolan up on the screen, up on credits. And my dad even mentioned it. He's like, I saw Chris Nolan's name so many times, like in the credits or whatever. We didn't even watch that. We only watched like 5 minutes of the credits. So I saw Chris Nolan's name so many times. And I'm like, people see Chris Nolan as a prophet. They'll listen to him more than they listen to themselves. They have their own opinion about the movie, but they'll take the thing that Chris Nolan makes and say, oh, it's great. You know why? Because this person made it. They won't worry about pathos or logos. They'll focus entirely on ethos and just be obsessed with that and be like, yeah, it's great because Chris Nolan made it. I guarantee you, if somebody else made this movie and it was not Chris Nolan, if it was some up and coming, new director, people would be like, oh, that's great for a new director, but he's got a long way to go. It's not at the level of Chris Nolan. That's what people will be saying. So that's also really cool. It's like, at the end of the day, these people, Oppenheimer and them, were also human. I think people got to realize that about Chris Nolan as well. He's just a human. He's no prophet. If you have an opinion about his movie, you should trust that opinion more than you trust the fact that he's ascended from heaven, giving revelations to the people, and they're all the greatest works of art of all time. If you don't think it's that great, you should listen to your own mind first. Just a thought. 6 out of 10. I didn't think it was terrible. If it didn't have sex scenes, I would give it an 8. They did not add anything to the movie. They made the movie worse. Like, you're paying more money to these actors to get them to do something that makes the movie less accessible, and it makes the movie worse. You're making a triple bad decision in one decision. You're killing 3 birds with 1 stone, and all the birds are essential. It's like, why? Why even throw the stone in the first place? Why do it? So stupid. You know what? 5 out of 10.